This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is August 24th, 2023. Jonathan Osborne here. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. We're going to lead today's show, unfortunately, with some tragic news. Kimberly Van Gundy, the wife of Stan Van Gundy, former Orlando Magic head coach. Kimberly has unexpectedly and tragically passed away this week. This news broke literally as we were getting set to record the podcast here. The Magic sent out a tweet that says, "We are deeply saddened to learn about the loss of Kim Van Gundy. Our thoughts and prayers are with Stan, their children Shannon, Michael, Allison, and Kelly, and the entire Van Gundy community." Just tragic, awful news, Luke. We send our condolences, our love, our thoughts, and our prayers to the Stan Van Gundy's family, and the entire Orlando Magic community is going to echo those sentiments as well. Just awful news, Luke.
Yeah, can't imagine what Stan and the whole family is going through. Things like this happen, and I think that we become maybe reflective, at least I hope we are, about just our own families and the relationships we have with friends and whoever they are. Just about, being present with them, telling them you're thinking of them, telling them you love them. Doing all of those things, can go a long way. And especially if you were to lose someone close to you tragically, a lot of people have at this point, I am sure, and understand where I'm coming from. But really heartbreaking news for sure. Yeah,
I can't echo that enough. Just cherish your loved ones. Tell someone that you love them today. Stop this podcast right now. Text whoever it is that just came to mind. Let them know that you love them. And, don't take your family for granted. So, again, our thoughts and prayers are with Stan and his entire family. And we are going to do our best here to move into the content that we had planned for today. So over the last couple of days, there's been different news in terms of the Magic signing different players to partially guaranteed Exhibit 10 contracts, which basically it's essentially like a training camp invite, if you will. The most recent and I guess most exciting has been this year's dunk contest winner, an NBA guard, Mac McClung. The Magic signed him to an Exhibit 10 contract over the last couple of days here. Mac, played at Georgetown, was undrafted out of Texas Tech. Was on a two-way contract with the Philadelphia 76ers last week. Obviously won the dunk contest. And this year played with the Delaware Bluecoats. The Sixers G League affiliate averaged 19.8 points, 5 assists, and 2.6 rebounds. Another guard, Mie Oni, who played in the British Basketball League this past year. He was a 2019 Ivy League Player of the Year. Second round pick in 2019, spent 3 seasons with the Jazz before he was traded to the Thunder and then was waived. He played for Yale, so another Ivy League guy. We had Devin Kennedy, who played for, I believe it was Princeton, if I'm not mistaken, Luke, in the Ivy League. So another guard from the Ivy League in Mie Oni. And then to me, this one might be the most exciting. Trevelin Queen, who was undrafted out of New Mexico State in 2020, played with the Rockets and also played with the G League Rio Grande Valley Vipers, where last year he was the G League MVP, averaged 25.3 points, 6.7 rebounds, 5.2 assists. So stacking up on guards with these Exhibit 10 contracts, Luke.
Yeah, I think that might be it. Was that his MVP year stats?
Yes.
I think that was the 21-22 season with the Vipers. So this last season with Fort Wayne, he was 22.6 points per game, 4.5 assists, 6.5 rebounds, almost 50% from the field, 27% from three, but he shot 7 a game, right? He was basically the guy there in Fort Wayne. And like you said, the most exciting to you and me as well, and really the reason for me is he was in the Destination NBA, a G League Odyssey, which is like a documentary that followed basically the life of the G League and certain players in it. One of them being Trevelyan Queen, and he was kind of highlighted here and there. They focused more in on his teammate Gabe York, former Lakeland Magic player as well, and just their dynamic and things like that, and how the journey is. So super interesting. If you guys want to check it out, it's on Prime Video actually. But yeah, Trevelyan Queen, just from that alone, just hearing people talk about him, what he does on the court, how talented he is. Obviously, his stats speak for it. And he has been in the NBA. He's played 17 total NBA games in the past couple seasons. He played for the Pacers last year, 7 games. Houston, the season before that, and put up respectable numbers. He was only playing 7 and 10 minutes a game, but pretty cool to be able to sign him and Mac McClung. Those are some 2 pretty interesting guys that we hope we don't see too much of, if at all, but it's still interesting. And those Exhibit 10s, can also be, converted into 2-way contracts as well, which is, it's basically training camp invite plus the ability to make them into essentially the 2-way, which we've got one more spot. So it'll be interesting to see who wins that, because I'm sure it'll be one of those 3 guys, I would assume.
And there's also always the chance that some of these guys end up in Osceola, with the was Lakeland, now Osceola Magic, the Orlando Magic's G League affiliate. I would be surprised. I mean, maybe if it's Trevelyan just because he's had so much success already in the G League, but given just the sheer amount of guards that we already have on this team, and with those 2-ways, you already have Kevon Harris, another guard signed to the 2-way, obviously Admiral Schofield. So I was kind of hoping that we would use that third 2-way on like a big, but if it's a guy like Trevelyan Queen, or if it's a guy like Mac McClung, I wouldn't be all that mad about it. So just something to pay attention to, over the course of the next 5 weeks or so, as we get closer to training camp. There will be more news on these sort of like training camp invites and Exhibit 10 deals. So Jason Beatty is doing a great job reporting all this. A lot of the stats that we just pulled from his article up on OrlandoSentinel.com specifically. So he basically has like a Exhibit 10 tracker that he's tweeted out. So if you don't follow him on Twitter, you can go ahead, or X, I guess. If you don't follow him on X, you can. If you don't, you can follow him, and then you can find that tracker to keep up with all of these training camp invites and so on and so forth over the course of the next couple of weeks here. And then last bit of Magic news, Luke, our boy, the Meerkat, Mighty Mouse, Jameer Nelson, was on the Knuckleheads podcast. I guess they recorded it during Summer League, so it's about a month or so old now. But with Q Rich, with Darius Miles, one of the absolute best NBA podcasts, by the way. Like I don't care who they have on, they always have such like great candid conversations, and they had a fantastic, insightful, hilarious conversation with Jameer Nelson. Obviously, he talks about his time in Orlando a ton. And I don't, maybe this isn't the best time to talk about this given what's going on with Stan, but Gilbert Arenas recently has a couple of times said that when he was in Orlando that people didn't necessarily love Stan Van Gundy. And every time they have one of like a former Magic player on the podcast, you can just tell that is just absolute BS. Like people talk so glowingly about Stan. So that was one thing that really stood out to me, is I've heard Gilbert say that a couple of times recently, and I'm just like, there's no possible way when you hear the way that guys that were here for a long time talk about Stan and just talk about how great of a person he is. So if you guys haven't listened to that already, I know Luke hasn't had the opportunity to yet. I know he will, but if you guys haven't listened to that, like please go back and listen to that. I mean, they've done one with Markel, they've done one with Dwight, obviously. They've done one with Hito Turkoglu. They've done a ton of Magic players. So if you guys haven't listened to that podcast before, like by all means, go back and find all that stuff. It's great.
Yeah, and next thing here, Jonathan, what we wanted to do, ESPN released their record predictions for the Eastern Conference. Now, you, myself, producer Kevin, went through the schedule recently, and we listed our projections, which I believe were like 42 wins. Me and Kev both said 42 wins, and then you had said 43, I believe. So we said 42 and 38. You said 43 and 37. So I like this because ESPN projected everyone in the basically top 10 of the Eastern Conference. So it gives you an idea. Okay, if the teams up here at the top are winning this amount of games, where does that put us if we, want to try to win 42? Like, I had projected, Kevin had projected for 43, like you said. And what if they don't? Like, where's the wiggle room? So on this, they've got the Celtics at 1, 55 and 27, Bucks at 2, 54 and 28. 3, the Cavaliers, 50 and 32. The Sixers, 47 and 35 at the 4 spot. The Heat at 46 and 36. The Knicks at 6th, 46 and 36 as well. Then the Hawks at 41 and 41. Nets, 39-43. Pacers, 38-44, as well as the Magic, 38 and 44. So the Magic in this situation would really interchangeably be the 10 or the 9 spot. So in looking at this, if we were to say, like, well, based on what I thought, 42 wins, they've got the Knicks at 6th with 46. So this could maybe put the Magic at 7 in this instance at 42 wins, which kind of stinks because you look at this and you're like, oh, maybe that does feel like the most realistic if the Magic, even if they win 42 games, because teams like the Knicks are likely going to be able to pull off a season where they do have 46 wins, right? So it's tough to know, but last year they won 47 and they're the 5th spot. So unfortunately, even if the Magic won 42, they'd be at 7 and have to be in the play-in. But you only got to win one game that way, and you get to host it, which would be awesome. So I sign me up for that outcome. If the Magic can be 7, sign me up, honestly. If you tell me the Magic are in play-in next year, I'm like, good, they should be. 10 spot is a little lower than I want. 9, much of the same. Hopefully we can get them in the 7 or 8.
Yeah. So just looking at, I placed a bet about a month ago now, on Bovada, the Magic's over under like season win total was set at 35.5. And now I'm looking on DraftKings. So they're still sitting at over under 36.5. So some places had them at 35, some places had them at 36. It's interesting now that like all of this has come out and they're setting the Magic's wins at 38, that none of these Vegas lines have moved. So that shows you how much Vegas thinks about the ESPN quote unquote experts. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'm putting experts in air quotes here. So it's pretty interesting. But still, just like putting us right there with Indiana, I guess I kind of understand, like below Brooklyn. I really don't know. Miami, 46 and 36, unless they know something that we don't and they are going to be trading for Dame. At that point, probably more than 46 wins would be your projection for the Heat. But for the Miami Heat team that we saw all of last year and then like losing key pieces and Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, it's comical to me that they think the Heat are going to win 46 games. But, the fact that they do have us at least in the play-in is encouraging. Like you're getting a little bit of respect there. But once again, just can't help but feel that nobody really pays attention to this team and knows this team. And over the course of the season, that will prove itself to be true.
And also, you got to look at the teams that, one bad thing goes wrong for literally one player and a team can plummet. Brooklyn is prime example. If anything happened to Bridges for any amount of time, that team plummets, in my opinion. If you pull up their roster, they've got there's nothing like they've got Bridges, Cam Thomas, Spencer Dinwiddie. Those are like their guys, right? Then you got Claxton, Finney Smith, Royce O'Neal. Obviously, you got Ben, but I genuinely think if Bridges were to go down, that team could fall apart. Wheels could come off at that point. So I think that they could definitely, I could see them falling below the Magic. I mean, ESPN only has them projected 1 win better than the Magic. So, and even the Hawks, right? You're at the 7th spot. You're only 3 wins better than the Magic in that scenario based on what they had predicted for us at 38 wins. We will see. Jonathan, the other thing that happened is that some spreads came out, which our listeners know I'm a big fan of all things Vegas spreads. So spreads both food and betting lines spreads. So
What's your favorite spread, food wise?
it's just maybe a good old Thanksgiving. That's quite the spread. You put
You're
out the
talking. I
spread
thought
there.
we were talking like jams, jellies, butters.
Oh no, I meant
We're
like
talking that
they
kind
put
of
on like a
spreads.
full spread. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm a fan of both.
So
but yes,
of course, yes, and jams are good too. So they put out some of those. They also put out, the first thing I'll hit on here is the season opener. So the first game of the year in October, the 25th? Is that correct?
correct.
October 25th at home against Houston. The Magic currently 3.5-point favorites. Just to give you guys an idea, also last season at home to Houston, they were a 5-point favorite. And the Magic lose that game. Paolo puts up 30, but the Magic lose that game at home. The Magic on the road against Houston, 1-point dogs, win that game. So spreads don't mean a ton, and we take it with a grain of salt, but it is nice to see, regardless of who the opponent is, the Magic favored to open the season. Starting the season 1-0 would be a great feeling. We didn't get to experience it last year playing against Detroit and, Beef Stew hitting that 3 against us, Isaiah Stewart. But then the in-season tournament spreads came out. In-season tournament, November 14th at Brooklyn. Magic open as 2.5-point dogs against Chicago. November 17th, 3-point dogs. November 21st, hosting Toronto, the Magic -2.5. So the first game they're favored and only game they're favored in the in-season tournament. And then November 24th, hosting Boston, your 4.5-point dog. Of those games, Jonathan, with those spreads, I tell you those, which one are you actually eager for that you might put some money on if the time came? You're not much of a guy that will bet when it comes to the Magic in general, unless it's like a full season projection, prop, whatever. But in hearing those, Brooklyn, 2.5-point dog, Chicago, 3-point dog, hosting Toronto, 2.5-point favorite, hosting Boston, 4.5-point dog. Which one do you look at and you're like, that's the one I would most likely put money on?
Well, going back to, like, this is relevant to the in-season tournament, but going back to the projections, I love the fact that not only Chicago, but also Toronto are both projected to finish lower than the Magic. Like, absolutely love that. And now when we talk about these spreads, like, if you're a team at home and you're only giving 2 to 3 points, like, to me, that tells me that Vegas thinks these teams are pretty even, and they're just giving you basically the points because you're the home team, right? Mm-hmm. You have the home court advantage. For me, probably the Nets game, because I think that's the most winnable of them all. Like, even like Toronto at home will probably be tough. Like, I really do expect the Magic to be significantly, like, at least 4 to 5 wins better than the Nets. I'm interested to see how teams with a full summer to look at Mikal Bridges' tape last year for the Nets as him as the number one option, how teams attack and game plan for him. He was great in the 20-plus games that he played for Brooklyn last year, but let's see you be the man night in and night out for an entire season. Am I convinced that he can do that yet? I'm really not. So I think these projections of Brooklyn are a little bit generous. So I'll probably say it would be that first one. But really, like, looking at all of these, like, I like how close they are. At Brooklyn, at Chicago, tells me they think that's going to be like a pick 'em essentially. Toronto at home, and then you've got Boston.
Yeah,
you've got three of the 4 teams that you're going to play are pretty close to you in these projections. So we've been talking about the fact that the Magic have a really good chance to come out of East Group C. And this just kind of validates that a bit more for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then you look at, I think, another one that is risky play, but you're hosting Boston, you're in a 4.5-point dog. We know what happens last year.
Money line.
You can go money line with this, I think. And the most recent matchup after you go and smack up
for the
Boston,
non-degenerates, the money line is just picking who's winning the game.
Right. You're going to get better odds that way than just going against the spread, is what my friend Jonathan here is getting at. On the schedule last year, you obviously go to TD and you win both those games. Then you host them January 23rd, and you win by 15, 113-98 at
And you
home.
almost beat them the third game of the season, the home opener last year.
You lose by 6, and that game felt closer than even 6. So not a bad bet. And also, if you get on this now, who knows where Boston is at in their record and the group play come that game? Will they care as much? Are they going to be 3-0 going into this game and just not, and they can, whatever the math works out, that they don't have to really care? It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, so always fun to see what Vegas, what ESPN, what everybody thinks about what the Magic are going to do, because most of the time they're wrong and the Magic are going to do better. So that is the new news on that front.
I do find it interesting, and sorry, I sort of missed the part about the home opener against the Rockets, that I said, like, hey, that 2 to 3 point area, like, that's really just home court advantage. You get to 3.5, and I know it sounds silly, like, oh, it's just a half a point, but to me, that kind of falls outside of that range where they do think that the Magic are the better team, and given the amount of like veteran experience that they have on that team now that they didn't have last year, Jeff Green, Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, obviously, a lot of their younger guys getting better, obviously,
adding young guys,
adding Amen Thompson. So
Cam
the
Whitmore.
fact that Cam Whitmore as well. So the fact that Vegas is still seeing Orlando as the better team, and if you're the Joker that was on one of our last comments or our last YouTube videos in the comments talking trash about how we expect to win that first game, like, yes, the Rockets are still going to be bad. I hate to break it to you. Enjoy the high lottery. So have fun with that. But anyways, let's pivot a little bit now. We've talked just some Orlando Magic news and some of the like super Magic focused stuff that came out the last couple of days. Coming up tomorrow, as you're listening to this on Thursday, so coming up on Friday at 4 a.m., the FIBA World Cup is going to start. So we thought this was going to be a good opportunity to do a little FIBA World Cup preview, if you will. So when we're talking specifically about the Magic, the teams that, if you're unfamiliar with international basketball, or this may be like your first FIBA World Cup and you haven't been paying attention like really closely the last couple of months here that we've been talking about this, the 4 teams that you really want to focus in on are going to be Georgia, Australia, Germany, and then Team USA, because Goga Bitadze, Magic's very own, is playing for Georgia. Joe Ingles, recently signed with Orlando this season, is going to be playing for Australia. The boy Franz Wagner and his brother Moritz Wagner are going to be playing for Germany. And then the number 1 overall pick and rookie of the year from last year, Paolo Banchero, is going to be playing for Team USA. So I wanted to go through here and just take a couple of minutes to go through just sort of the situation around each of those 4 teams as they are relevant to the Magic, and just kind of talk about how they've been playing over the course of the last few weeks in these international friendlies, getting ready for the FIBA World Cup. So first off, with Georgia, a couple of names that you may recognize, obviously, Goga Bitadze, and then Sando Mamukelishvili. That is a mouthful there. He played for the San Antonio Spurs this last year, so 2 NBA players on this Georgia roster. They went 3-3 in international friendlies. I know Goga Bitadze missed at least the first 2, maybe 3 friendlies, and they did lose their first 2. So that record may not really be indicative of how good they are, but they had losses to Lithuania, Latvia, and Australia, and then had wins over Jordan, Montenegro, and Nikola Vucevic. Goga Bitadze had a great game in that one, and then a win also over Iran. And in the latest FIBA World Cup power rankings, Georgia is ranked 18th, and Georgia is in Group F, which we will cover the groups a little bit more in detail in a few minutes here. And then Luke, Australia is absolutely stacked. Joe Ingles, Josh Giddey, Patty Mills, Matisse Thybulle, Dyson Daniels, Josh Green, Jack White, who played for the Denver Nuggets last year, NBA champion Jack White, by the way, and then Xavier Cooks, who played for the Washington Wizards last year. They were 4-1 in international friendlies, a close loss to Brazil, and then wins over Venezuela, South Sudan, a big win over France, and then a win over Georgia. Australia, Luke, is ranked 6th in the latest FIBA power rankings. And now the big boys, Germany, Franz Wagner, Moritz Wagner, Dennis Schroeder, Daniel Tice, Isaac Bonga. They went 4-2 in their international friendlies. They had a loss to Canada in the basketball Super Cup final in overtime. They also had a loss to the U.S. They had wins over Sweden, Canada, China, and Greece. Luke, they jumped all the way up to third in the latest FIBA power rankings. Germany getting some respect in these power rankings.
Well,
I think actually it might have been 2.
Yeah.
I may be mistaken there.
I think I definitely saw that.
It's 2. Yeah, so they jumped 3 spots. That's where the 3 came in my mind. But yeah, they're second in the power rankings in the FIBA World Cup. That's crazy.
Well, all you have to do at that point is watch what they did against the U.S. and how well they challenged them, and just ended up falling apart at the end of being, quite frankly, out-talented. And
it was their second game of a back-to-back as well. I think that's important.
Yeah. So, not super surprising there that Germany jumps all the way to 2.
Yeah, just a super fun team to watch. They defend really, really well. Tons of chemistry on this team. They just play so well together. When they are on and everything is clicking right now, because the U.S. just doesn't have the level of chemistry that Germany does. Like when Germany is rolling, like they are just as good, if not better, than any team in this tournament. So if you, I guess, are not that interested in what happens with Team USA, like some people are, just because you expect them to win it every year. If you want a team to follow that is relevant to the Magic and has a real chance to upset and make a deep run into this tournament and maybe even to a semifinal and final, they could even win the whole thing. Germany is going to be a really fun team to watch. And then the U.S., tons of talent. Obviously, Paolo Banchero. We can go through the rest of the roster here. Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Jaren Jackson Jr., Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, Austin Reeves. Just absolutely the most talented team in the entire tournament. They went 5-0 in their international friendlies. Wins over Puerto Rico, Slovenia. Were challenged a little bit by Spain in the first half. Were challenged a little bit by Greece. Were really challenged by Germany. Germany was up by as much as 16 in that game before the U.S., I think, went on like an 18-0 run, closed that game on a 22-5 run. And yes, they are ranked first in the latest FIBA power rankings. Luke, there's been some conversation in the media. I think somebody said that it was specifically the Bill Simmons podcast. Bill Simmons was talking about Team USA and was talking about the FIBA World Cup. And I haven't listened to the pod, but I saw multiple people that we follow and interact with on Magic Twitter talking about how Bill Simmons said that Paolo just might not be ready for this moment. Can you just talk about Paolo Banchero and his role on this team, just how ridiculous a statement that is?
Well, the fact that the role isn't anything crazy. Now, there are times where, you're not going to throw Paolo out there to be your backup 5 like you want. You're going to go with guys like Walker Kessler solely because you got guys on the other side of the ball like Daniel Tice, for instance, who was dominating anybody and everybody if you tried to go small on them in that game. He's a big body. He's a freaking professional in the NBA. So he knows what to do. He knows how to handle mismatches and things like that. So, listen, man, the role for Paolo isn't anything incredible right now. He's paying his dues, and quite frankly, he's not as good as a lot of those guys that are in the starting lineup, for instance, and fighting for minutes. It just is what it is. I don't know that he's not ready, but it is just unfortunate that the only way they are going to use him and get him minutes, the only path for him is playing backup 5, it seems. And unless the other team is playing small as well or just doesn't have his physical big men, Paolo's not going to really see the court much. So unless he's used differently, and I don't think that that's going to be the case. The more that it goes on, the more experience he gets in the internet on the international scene. We will see this shift as obviously he becomes just a better basketball player and better feel and more experience in international play. We know that is different than the NBA. The pace is different. What matters is very different in international play. It's less hero ball. It's more pick and roll and just team chemistry involvement. All matters. So Paolo, yes, has played, his things to do and ways to grow, but I wouldn't say that he's not ready. That's just not a fair statement. And being ready for the role just stinks, quite frankly, for Paolo Banchero, and he's just going to take what he can get.
I will say, like, part of that USA run, like, Paolo was in for the beginning part of that run and started to help get the US like back into that team. Like, has he been phenomenal offensively? No, but that's not at all what he's being asked to do. And like defensively, as a backup five, and this is not a knock on Paolo, like, we go back to the pre-draft process last year, and although I might not have been 100% sure that Paolo was going to be the number one pick for us, I always dismissed the argument that he was just going to be like a poor defender in the NBA. I just, could you make the argument at Duke? Sure, but on the team that we have, with the coaching staff that we have, the way that this team plays, I knew that was never going to be the case with Paolo. But even still, had you told me that he would be as solid defensively as he has been through those 5 international friendly games for the U.S., he's exceeded my expectations in this role. I genuinely did not think he was going to be the backup 5 for this team. I didn't know that he was really capable of doing it on a game in and game out basis. And has he had some moments that are better than others? Absolutely. But I'm pretty sure in limited minutes, he's averaging essentially a block, maybe even a little bit more than a block per game through these international games. And if this team starts to get stops on a consistent basis with Paolo on the floor and he's able to get out and transition, that's where you're going to be able to see the impact that Paolo can make. And let's not get it twisted. Like, they've been playing good quality teams. Paolo's going to have the opportunity to sort of get his feet underneath him in the group stages. They're not going to be playing Spain and Slovenia and Greece and Germany each night. He's going to have a chance to sort of warm up as the group stages of the FIBA World Cup start. So I just thought that was ridiculous. Yeah. I am a fan of Bill Simmons. I know you are as well. But, sometimes he has a tendency to sort of swim in waters that are a little bit too deep for him when he just is talking about things that he really doesn't know about. And this was one of those instances.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the times his podcasts are just open thoughts, and he just talks and just thinks out loud is what it really happens. And it makes for
his greatest strength and his greatest weakness.
Exactly. That's what makes his podcast incredible. But it also is the downfall of it as well. Now, granted, the pros far outweigh the cons because we know how many listeners they bring in. But also, I will say, I haven't listened to the podcast episode. I'm sure there's things Bill said about Paolo that I would agree with, maybe on like the shortcomings of him on Team USA, maybe. But what I also will say is that Bill Simmons is not a Paolo Banchero hater historically. He actually, in February, I think, did like trade value rankings, and I'm sure we talked about it on the show at the time when it got released. But Paolo was 15th, Franz was 25th. He's known to bring up the Magic in positive light as of late, and some of their guests do in general. But
last decade, not so much, but the last 2 years or so, yes.
Well, to be fair, there was not much worth talking about.
I'm not arguing against. I'm just stating the facts.
Yeah, so I don't. He hasn't been a Paolo hater, so I think he was probably thinking out loud. And again, I didn't hear the full context, so I don't know. But yeah, I would venture to say that is not Paolo's fault at all. I don't think that he's not ready. I just think it's a crappy role. And it is what it is, but he's just paying his dues. That's all it is. I just think it's not necessarily wrong, but it's not right, but it's like not warranted. And there's so much more context to be added than just a statement like that. So whatever.
Let's take a moment to thank our wonderful patrons, the folks that help make each and every episode possible. If you're interested in becoming one of our patrons, and again, helping make each episode possible, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man show, where for as little as $2 a month plus some other tiers, you can get additional benefits. And again, just help us do what we do. So if you're a fan of our content and would like to be a part of that, again, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man show. Part of our Patreon benefits are if you're part of our Hall of Fame or Elite tier, we shout you out on every single episode. So I'll go ahead and start with the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson Tulo, Jonathan Borges, Normal, Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, The Distract, Donkey Punch Dave, Paolo and Francis Warmth, Pierre A, Nostalgia and M&M's, Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Drummy Drum, Danimal, Dutto 15, Bobby Skinner, PB in the Mix, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Eric Lopez, Fuchsia, Juan Geraldo, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Destined for Greatness, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, ESPN, Really Sucks, Gear 95, Shred, Junior Bruce, African, Shahin 177, Bulby the Don, Himlo Ban Himro, R Improv 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Spanking Season, Soft Taco, Johnny B, Fuego Nando, Victor Cologne, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampete, Random Hustle, Only Franz, Maria, Keith Wallace, Fritz, Trade for Grady, We Need Dick, Currency Kev, Bruv Sal. A big thank you to all of our Hall of Fame elite tier patrons and all of our patrons. Again, if you want to join our Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man show. Luke, what I want to do next is just take a look at the FIBA groups and just go through, I believe it's 32 teams in total that are going to be at the FIBA World Cup, and just go through each of the groups. So starting with Group A, we have Angola, the Dominican Republic, Philippines, and Italy. Group B, South Sudan, Serbia, China, and Puerto Rico. Group C, the USA, Jordan, Greece, and New Zealand. Group D, Egypt, Mexico, Montenegro, Lithuania. Group E, Germany, Finland, Australia, and Japan. Group F, Slovenia, Cape Verde, Georgia. Is that Cape Verde or Cape Verde? I can never remember. Georgia, Venezuela. Group G is Iran, Spain, the Ivory Coast, and Brazil. And then Group H, Canada, Latvia, Lebanon, and France. The groups that really matter to Magic fans are going to be Group C, Group E, and Group F. So Group C has the United States, Jordan, Greece, and New Zealand. So when we're talking about the likelihood that each of these teams are going to come out of the group stage, just want to give you the recent FIBA World Cup power rankings that were released. The USA was ranked first, Jordan 24th, Greece 15th, New Zealand 20th. Obviously, Greece would be much higher if it was for Giannis Antetokounmpo, not playing this summer and healing up for the NBA season. But Luke, the U.S. are coming out of Group C. They absolutely have to. If not, it would be probably the biggest failure in the history of American professional sports. Is that an understatement?
I definitely wouldn't say that's much of an understatement. I mean, you have to come out of this group, like you said. I don't know the history of every pitfall that the United States has had in international play, but I would imagine not getting out of this group stage would be the very, very top of the list. Probably number one if you didn't.
Looking back to 2004, the United States Olympic team winning bronze in the 2004 Olympics. Everybody, knows that story, that team was just kind of thrown together. We've seen all the stuff about the Redeem team now. We saw that documentary that was really, spurred in this sort of revolution, or evolution, this change in USA basketball started with that failure at the 2004 Olympics. Since the Dream Team rather, the expectation has been that the U.S. is going to win gold, competition and competition out. So they talk about that 2004 bronze medal like it's the worst thing that's ever happened. Getting bounced in the group stage of the FIBA World Cup against the 24th, 15th, and 20th ranked teams in regards to FIBA, that would absolutely have to be the biggest failure, especially in Team USA basketball history. The next group is Group E. So this is important because it has two of our teams, Germany, Finland, Australia, and then Japan. Germany ranked 3rd, Finland ranked 12th, Australia ranked 6th, and then Japan ranked 26th. So you would definitely expect Germany and Australia to be the teams from Group E that are going to move on. And then last but not least, Group F, Slovenia, Luka Doncic, they're ranked 8th, Cape Verde ranked 31st, Georgia ranked 18th, and then Venezuela ranked 25th. So out of all the teams, Georgia is definitely going to have the hardest time, I think, in the group stage. Venezuela, a team that is not too far behind you. You're going to be playing against Slovenia, so it's going to be a difficult matchup for Georgia for sure. But I think there's a good chance, Luke, that all four teams end up coming out of their group stage, and then potentially we're going to get some magic on magic crime when it comes to the knockout rounds.
I think you're bound to. I think that all of these teams have a great chance to make it to the knockout rounds. And Georgia against Cape Verde, whatever, Georgia's favored by 13 to start that to open on August 26th at 4 a.m. So they're favored to win that game by double digits. That should be easy for them. Yeah, all these teams have a great chance. So I would think it's a high possibility we see a little Magic matchup action.
If you're looking forward to watching these World Cup games, plan on getting up very early, at least for the next week or so. Now, all of the World Cup games are going to be available on ESPN Plus. So I don't know if ESPN Plus has like a free trial or something like that you can sign up for just for this week to watch these games, or what is ESPN Plus? I don't know, 10, 11 bucks or whatever it is for the next couple of weeks here. You can watch the entire FIBA World Cup. So that's going to start on Friday, the 25th. That's going to be Australia versus Finland. That game is going to start at 4 a.m. And then later on the 25th, Germany versus Japan at 8:10 a.m. Eastern. So I'm probably going to wake up, watch Australia versus Finland, or watch as much of that game as I can. That game will probably be over about 6. I'll go back to sleep from like 6 to 7:30, get up with the kids at that point, and then watch Germany versus Japan. And then on Saturday, we've got Georgia versus Cape Verde. That, again, is going to be at 4 a.m. Then later that day, you've got the U.S. versus New Zealand at 8:40 Eastern. On Sunday, we've got Germany versus Australia, Magic versus Magic. There you go, right there in the group stage. That game is going to be at 4:30 a.m. Later that morning, the next day. So that's going. Now we're into Monday. There's only going to be one game for the Magic on Sunday. That's going to be that 4:30 game, Germany versus Australia. Then Monday, Georgia versus Slovenia and Luka Doncic. So that's going to be a really fun game to watch. That's going to tip off at 7:30 on next Monday. And then later that day, the USA versus Greece, going to be a rematch from the USA showcase that we saw in Abu Dhabi. That game's going to tip off at 8:40 a.m. Eastern. And here comes the earliest game of the tournament, at least for Magic fans that care, is going to be on Tuesday, the 29th, Germany versus Finland at 3:30 a.m. Maybe I'll just stay up all night. Maybe I won't go to bed. I'll just stay up and watch that game and go to bed after. Who knows? Or I'll wake up, watch that game, and then absolutely go back to bed. Later that morning on the 29th, you've got Australia versus Japan, 7:10 a.m. Eastern. And then on the 30th, you've got the final two games for the Magic. Georgia versus Venezuela starts at 4, and then USA versus Jordan starts at 4:40 a.m. Eastern. So maybe you watch like the first half of Georgia versus Venezuela, and then you switch over to USA versus Jordan and just kind of jump back and forth and keep tabs on what's going on with those games. But that's going to be the FIBA World Cup group stage schedule as it pertains to the Magic. Maybe you need to go back a couple of minutes and jot all these down, or if you follow us on social media, especially if you follow us on Twitter or X, whatever the heck we're calling it now, our pinned tweet has all of the schedule, through the group stage of, the World Cup. So you'll be able to click on that and then scroll down a little bit. You'll be able to find the full FIBA World Cup group stage schedule for the Magic players, Luke.
So let's real quick, Jonathan, before we wrap up here, let's play a quick game. The game here is going to be called How Many Games Are You Waking Up to Watch? I am going to set an over-under, and you tell me if you are going to hit the over or the under, okay? I am going.
Are we talking about my intentions or what will actually happen in reality?
What will actually happen? What if you had to place a bet? This is how many games I'm getting up to watch. I will be watching at the live time, not in a playback mode. You've got. I'm going to set the over/under for you at 6.5.
That's the perfect over/under for me.
Thank you.
My intention is going to be over. The reality,
11, by the way, I believe.
The reality might be under. I'm really going to do my best. Like the Germany and USA games to me are like must-watch television. So that right off the bat is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then can I squeeze, like, okay, on my birthday, I'm probably like guaranteed going to wake up at 4 a.m. for that Australia game.
Damn.
So I'm that's gonna start the 25th on Friday. That's gonna start my day. Australia versus Finland, Germany versus Japan. I'll have both of those right out of the way. I feel an obligation to Goga to watch that first Georgia game versus Cape Verde.
You're going to watch a 4 a.m. for Goga and Georgia.
Listen, I have
as they
been
take
doing
on
my
Cape
best.
Verde.
Listen, I've been doing my absolute best to cover these guys as much as possible throughout the international friendlies. I didn't watch a single Australia game. I didn't watch a single Georgia game. I feel like I owe it to Goga. Like it may not be that game, but like Georgia versus Slovenia on the 28th at 7:30 a.m., I'm watching that game. So if we're saying I'm going to watch Australia, that first game, right? And then I'm going to watch all of Germany, all of the US, and then I'm going to watch Georgia versus Slovenia. That already puts me at what, 8? So I'm going to take the over. I may fail, but that is the mission and the intention that I am setting out on.
You're gonna wake up for 3:30 Georgia versus Finland.
I didn't
on
say
August
that.
29th.
I didn't.
You said
You
said the Germany games.
You just said Georgia versus Finland.
Sorry.
Yes, Germany versus Finland.
Germany.
Yes, I will. I'm going to set the alarm. Whether I roll out of bed or not, that remains to be seen. I'm a grown man, Luke. I reserve the right to change my mind, but that is my intention as of right now.
You can do that, but my favorite thing during this is not going to be the World Cup itself. It's going to be seeing if you woke up to
the
watch
Jonathan
some of these
tracker.
Games. Yeah, the Jonathan tracker. I'm going to start a Twitter account. Did Jonathan wake up for the FIBA World Cup? Yes or no?
I really hope so. And you know what? Part of me is like, our international listeners do it all the time for the Magic. So part of me is like, you know what? I'm gonna show the boys across the world that old Jonathan can hang. All right, y'all aren't the only ones that can go to bed late, get up early, do whatever you got to do.
To be fair, there's a lot more incentive for them to stay up for Magic games than you to stay up for these games. To be fair, to give you a little bit of benefit of the doubt, if you don't do it, if you disappoint yourself, these guys you would do this for Magic games at 100%.
You know what though?
If you lived over there,
and this is just, and not to take anything away from Joe Ingles or Goga Bitadze, right? But like Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner right now are like two of my favorite players in the entire world. Obviously, they play for my favorite team. I love them personally. I love their game and everything like that. You don't feel that I've been giving Germany the same amount of attention that I give Magic regular season games?
I mean, I guess there's
like
just
pretty
not been
close,
that many.
like at least 80% of.
Yeah, I mean, you're locked in.
I've been rooting
sure.
for Germany like they're the Magic. I've been rooting for Paolo's minutes, at least when he's playing for Team USA, like I've been rooting for the Magic. Like I want them to succeed in all facets of life, all facets of basketball. The better they do, the more attention it's going to bring to the Magic. Franz Wagner, his Euro basket performance last year, like absolutely put more of a spotlight on the Magic during like the dog days of the summer. If Franz ends up being the FIBA World Cup MVP and drops like 25 in the FIBA World Cup final, like the center of the basketball world at that time is going to be Orlando. I mean, obviously it'll be Germany more so than Orlando. But for people that don't care about international basketball or are only going to pay attention because they're NBA guys playing in these games, they're like, oh, yo, Paolo versus Franz in the FIBA World Cup final was crazy. Look at what Orlando's cooking, Mm-hmm. So I get hyped up for these games. Like even the Germany versus US game, when Paolo wasn't in the game and like Germany was building a lead and guys were hitting shots, I'm like, look at Obst. Oh my goodness. look at Johannes Voigtman. Like, I get excited for these games. So again, I'm going to set the alarm that morning. I cannot promise that I'm going to roll out of bed, but when I lay my sweet little head down to sleep and I say my prayers and I thank the good Lord before I go to bed that night, the intention is going to be for me to set my alarm for like 3:20 a.m. and roll out of bed and probably come into this room so I don't wake up the rest of the entire house and sit here most likely with either an energy drink or a cup of coffee and yes, watch frickin' Germany versus Finland.
We'll see. Can't wait.
See. Do you want me to text you at 3:30? Like, yo, I'm up.
Yeah, I'm up. Just a picture of the setup.
No, you'll just be able to see Twitter the next morning and see whether or not I live tweeted
if you were
the
tweeting
game.
or not. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And listen, if it's 4:45 and Germany is up by 25 on Finland, may I close my eyes for a little bit? Possibly. But the intention is going to be there for me.
I respect it for sure.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wrap it up. All right. That's going to do it for this episode, folks. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!